So here's a question for you. Who do you think is most often involved in crashes? Men, women, younger, older? From 2006 to 2010, there were 10,000, a little over 10,000 crashes, and over half of those involved kids. This was a chart that came out from the state a year or so ago, and they looked at pedestrian and bicycle crashes involving kids. And they found that over half of the bicycle crashes anyway were people under the age, I call them kids, under the age of 18. So here's some common crash scenarios that we don't like to see. This is what I call bad motorist behavior. The first one, the motorist tries to pass the bicyclist too close to the turn, makes a right turn, and comes across with the right turn, so the cyclist ends up hitting the side of the car, or the car ends up hitting the side of the bicyclist. The second one, with the car not seeing the bicyclist coming up the road, makes a left turn into the intersection as the bicyclist enters the intersection. Some bad bicycling behavior, some of which unfortunately is encouraged by some of the infrastructure that we see these days. The first one has the bicycle rider sliding up beside the cars that are stopped at the red light. And that has a tendency to create problems because the driver in that first or second car may not see the people sliding up next to them, and you get a right turn situation. I had a call from Columbus on a case where the fellow described exactly that, and I had to say, look, I'd love to help you, bud. He pulled into the intersection, and as he was, the light was red, and as he was proceeding, the light turned green when he was next to the first car, so he just kept going. That car made the right turn right into him. Another bad bicycling behavior is riding on the wrong side of the street. The third scenario, where you see debris and the bicycle rider is kind of jutting out more into the lane to avoid the debris. The fourth scenario, with the parked cars and the rider kind of weaving in and out of the parked cars. And then the fifth behavior is the bicyclist getting doored, as we call it, riding in door zone, riding within 3 or 4 feet of the parked cars. So what are the laws relating to riding a bicycle on the roadway? I mean, the basic provision is same road, same rules. Bicycles have to do everything cars do for the most part. They have to obey the speed limit, they got to stop at stop signs, they got to follow the traffic control devices. There's a couple of special rules that we'll talk about in a minute, but basically, if you choose to ride a bicycle on the roadway, you are governed by the same basic traffic laws that everyone who drives a car is. So where can you ride? There's very common language that we see in almost every state, as near to the right side of the roadway as practicable. And that word practicable, when I look it up in the Ohio Revised Code, is completely undefined. It's used in hundreds of code sections in various ways, but there's no definition of it. And so until 2006, really, we didn't have any type of mechanism to help define that. The other thing that 451155 says is that cyclists are allowed to ride 2 abreast. They're not allowed to ride more than 2 abreast, but they're allowed to ride 2 abreast. There's 2 cases listed here under the first one is State versus Stephen Sells, and the second one is State versus Tony Patrick. I got to represent Steve Sells in that case. Steve was a transportation cyclist, meaning he rode everywhere. He didn't own a car, didn't want a car. He rode his bike everywhere, and he got a ticket for going 17 miles an hour uphill from a standing start on a 5-lane, 2 each way with a turning lane road in Trotwood, Ohio. Steve asked me to help him. We ended up, I enlisted the Ohio Bicycle Federation, here they are, for some help, and we ended up putting all of the documents from the case online so that people could look at them, and I encouraged people to write in and give me their thoughts on things, and it was a very unusual, for me at least, because I'd never done that with a group before. But we got a lot of people from all over the country, really all over the world, ended up emailing the city of Trotwood to talk about their feelings on this case. And what happened was we tried the case and lost, and the judge said, all right, here's a $100 fine, you go pay the ticket. And so we appealed it to the Second Appellate District, which sits in Dayton. And I had a friend who had clerked for the Second Appellate District, and I said, what are these judges like up there? And how are they going to look at this kind of this dinky little traffic case? And she said, well, 2 of them are actually pretty outdoorsy, bike ridey kind of guys. They'll probably be at least favorable to listening. And 2 of them are kind of hardcore, they're not going to want it, and they're going to think you're wasting your time, basically. And then there's one sort of kind of straddling the fence on the thing. And sure enough, so we decided to file the appeal. And with the appeals, the way the appeals court works, you don't know which of the 3 judges of the 5 you're going to get on your case until you walk in to argue the case that morning. And so we filed the briefs and we wrote all the stuff and went up to Dayton to argue the case. And here's one of the good guys, one of the bad guys, and the guy in the middle. And so it was I was arguing completely to the guy in the middle, trying to keep him on our side. And sure enough, it ended up being a 2-to-1 decision in our favor, with the fellow who was against us writing that he would have upheld the conviction. But the 2 that went our way said, no, you can't impede traffic, because that's what he was cited for, impeding traffic at 17 miles an hour. He says, if you're going as fast as a bicycle can go, or you can go on the bicycle, and you're not intentionally trying to go slow, so you, for whatever reason, to impede traffic, then you can't be ticketed for impeding traffic. And they did say that based on the evidence, and we didn't argue it, and there was other evidence, but because he wasn't ticketed for not riding as far right as practicable, there was some language in that case that said, well, you could have been ticketed for that, but they chose not to do that. But we won that case in the Court of Appeals, and then that ended up being sort of a watershed moment in this concept of what is a bicycle. And the argument I made was bicycles don't impede traffic, bicycles are traffic. And they're part of traffic, and this flag of traffic is very colorful, and it has lots of big black and white lines like cars and trucks and buses, but there's also lots of little colorful squiggles in there that are bicycles and Amish buggies and farm combines, and we all have to kind of accommodate each other on the roadway.